السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأفضل الصلاة وتم التسليم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل وألهمنا رشدنا يا رب العالمين. Alhamdulillah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He make our seeking of knowledge a means of mercy for ourselves and for humanity, because it is knowledge is one of the means to divine mercy. So in our lessons on the Mukhtasar of Quduri from the section on Mu'amalat, we are completing today the section on Wakala, and then after that we're going to look at Hawala bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Wakala, agency. So we reached at والوكيل بالبيع والشراء. ومن وكل، قال الإمام القدري رحمه الله، ومن وكل بشيء ثم تصرف فيه فيما وكل بطلت الوكالة فيما وكل به. So whoever appoints another as their agent with respect to any matter, right? Whether they appointed someone as an agent to buy on their behalf or to sell on their behalf, and then the person who appointed the agent went and they transacted in the matter, right? Or they acted upon the matter themselves, then the agency is negated. How? For example, if I appointed someone as an agent to sell this book on my behalf, and then so they're the agent, they're supposed to be selling the book, but instead I took the book and I put it up for sale, right? I put the book up for sale, right? So what happens? Because once I put it up for sale, how can someone else sell it, right? This is separate from, right? So of course there are derivative applications of this, right? This is where this tasarruf lifts the tasarruf of the wakil, right? Of the agent, right? So sometimes there are some scenarios where, I get an agent to help me in selling the house, right? But this is one of the things that would also need to be made clear contractually, because the assumption is that one person can engage in the transaction, right? So if I appoint someone as an agent to sell something or to buy something, the assumption is, the general assumption is, they say, okay, I appoint you as an agent to buy that art piece, but then I put a bid for it. It's assumed then that I'm not going through the agent, right? Especially if he comes to know of it, right? Because the issue of then his permission is considered to have been revoked once he finds out that I'm transacting in it. And this of course leads to dispute, because there are possibilities that someone just dabbling, right? That I want a copy of the book, but I went and made a few bids at an auction as well. Did that revoke the agent or not? The assumption is that it did. But the safe thing is that things like this should be made clear, right? Either in advance in the contract, or if not, then by before such a transaction, making it clear right? That I am withdrawing your wakala, withdrawing your agency, or your agency is continuing, but I am also trying to sell it, right? Right? Okay. والوكيل بالبيع والشراء لا يجوز أن يعقد عند أبي حنيفة مع أبيه وجده وولده وولد ولده وزوجته وعبده ومكاتبه، وقال يجوز بيعه منهم بمثل القيمة. Right? 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 So this issue, right, that the agent, an agent appointed to to sell something or buy something, it is not permitted and not valid for them to enter into contract with, according, this is the position of Abu Hanifa, with those who could not serve as a witness for them, right? Meaning their immediate family, for example, right? Their father or mother, their grandparents, their children, their grandchildren, their spouse, their slave, right? Right? Why? Because there's a conflict of interest, because the interests between these people are considered shared. So I appointed someone as an agent to buy plastic tables on my behalf. And I went to someone, and they went and bought them from their parents. That act of agency is not ascribed as being, the act of the agent there is not ascribed to the muwakkil, to the one who appointed them. Why? Because of the conflict of interest. Because the basis is that if the wakil is buying from a parent or a child or one of these people with whom there's or a spouse, then they would be taking into account their interest, right? They would be taking into account their interest, right? And their interest overlaps with theirs, so there's a conflict of interest. So this would not be permitted, and this is and the Majalla took the opinion of Imam Abu Hanifa. You can see it in item 1149, I believe. Right? But of course, this is unless permission was sought. Right? Unless permission was sought, either in advance, right, or before the transaction, right? وقال يجوز بيعه منهم بمثل القيمة. And the Sahibain said it is permitted to transact with one's immediate family, for example, at the market price, right? Because the tawkil is general, right? Right? And ownership is separate, right? So, right? So this is one of the things that requires caution, right? And people make mistakes on it again, right? Because there's a conflict of interest. And the same thing would apply, they say, in other situations where there's conflict of interest. For example, hiring, like if you know, and others whose witness is not accepted, this comes up in Bab al-Shahada, it would include partners in two people own a company together, or two people who are working together, right? Someone is your employee, right? There would be a conflict of interest there. So there, the proper practice is Islamically that now if this happens, what would happen? The transaction would be ascribed to the wakil, right? And they would have to compensate the person who appointed them as their wakil at the market rate, right? So it's a problem, but it's also considered to be khilaful amana. So, and if you can't do it to someone else, you can't get it for yourself, right? How? Let's say someone gave me 100 carpets to sell, and I bought 3 for myself. The basis is this is not permitted. The Sahibain said, Yajuz, it's permitted if it's with them at the market price, right? Properly in a transaction, this should be specified. One, if you set a minimum sale price, right? You set a regular sale price, a minimum sale price. Then if you sell it to them at that price, this is reasonable. It is most dangerous in things where there isn't a clear sale price. This also, in terms of wakala, this applies in employment by hiring somebody, right, with whom you have a conflict of interest, right? Now you say, oh, that's just a Western concept. No, this is deeply embedded in our fiqh, and it's manifest across chapters, right? That if there is a conflict of interest, you have to disclose it, right? And it applies to wakala, it applies elsewhere. So for example, I'm a passive partner in a particular Sharia advisory group. Now, if someone asked me a fiqh question, right, and they say, do you know of a reliable Sharia advisory group? For me to tell them, so they here, because the wakil is mu'taman, right? The wakala is an amana. That if I'm acting on your behalf, I'm taking care of your best interests or your sound interests. So where there's a conflict of interest, where my giving you advice is contradicted by my interests, I have to disclose that, right? So here, if the agent wanted to sell to their parents or their child or their spouse, etc., there's a few things. One, it should be agreed upon. It could be either agreed upon in the contract, or there's itlaq. I can sell to whomever I wish, but then you set a price, so it doesn't need to dispute. Then it would be allowed, right? If you set a price, so that if you're selling to those people, you're selling at that price. But where that's not clear, because certain things are defined. I'm selling these carpets, but what if I'm an agent to, someone gives me $10,000 and says, go to Turkey and buy merchandise there to sell. So I go to my sister, let's say, who is living in Turkey, and I bought from her. There's a conflict of interest there. Safer thing is just not to do it, or to disclose that in advance, but not to. Why? Because that would not be permitted. This will wakil bishira, right? So this is where things are clearly defined, such as in selling, right, an item. That's easier, right? Because in selling, someone wakil bil bay'a, to sell, if you set the market price, who you sell it to, it's fine. But you need to be very, very, very careful about that, right? Simple thing is to set a minimum price. You're an agent selling books on behalf of another. You set the price, and then you could buy it yourself, right? But of course, how you buy it yourself, that's a separate question. Buying yourself would entail that is based on approval from the other party, right? Which can be reasonably assumed, right? If you've set the price. But that's why wakala is an amana. Okay. إلا في عبده وكاتبه. والوكيل بالبيع, right? يجوز بيعه بالقليل والكثير عند أبي حنيفة. Someone appointed to sell on behalf of another, appointed as an agent to sell on behalf of another, is allowed to sell for a little or a lot, right? According to Abu Hanifa, right? If the command is general. Of course, what is the general command conditioned by? By urf. Al-ma'ruf urfan kal-mashrut shartan. Right? By a little or a lot, but it's right. Right. So the i'tibar of urf is a strong consideration here, because what's clearly known customarily is as if conditioned. Right? وقال لا يجوز بيعه بنقصان لا يتغابن الناس. Right? And the Sahibain said it is not permitted to sell for a reduced amount that people don't that is beyond market variance, right? Al-ghabn, that's not the kind of reduced amount in selling or excess amount in buying that's outside market variance, because there's the qima, there's the market price, and then there's ghabn yasir, right? There's an excess, a slight excess, which is ma yutaghabanu bimithlihi, the like of it. So for example, let's say you got 100 double-walled glasses. Now, the regular market price, let's say for a dozen double-walled glasses, let's say, is between $40 and $50. That's a regular market price. You might some places might sell it for $59.99, $64.99. That's there's a certain amount that's called ghabn yasir. Al-ghabn al-fahish is the excess beyond the limit that would be considered accepted in the market. That someone goes and searches for how much do a dozen glasses come for. There's a band of prices that would be considered to be the qima, and there's a certain amount. And then beyond that, there's a ghabn yasir. There's a slight excess, in selling or in buying. And then there is al-ghabn al-fahish, which is ma la yutaghabanu bimithlihi. The like of an excess like that is not accepted in the market. Right? Right? So the fatwa here is on the position of the Imam. Okay. According to the authors of the Mutun, but others have mentioned that the position is on the fatwa, like in the Bazzaziyah, that the fatwa is on the position of Imam Abu Hanifa. Right? So okay. Here so Zahir al-Riwayah is that if you appoint an unconditional agent, they can sell for whatever price they want. But the Sahibain said that you can only sell for within the for a reduced price within al-ghabn al-yasir, with slight excess or slight loss in selling, slight profit, slight excess in the price in buying. That is within what is reasonable, right? And especially with the loss of trust, the qawl of the Sahibain has been given a lot of weight here. But what people should be pointed to, especially when one put parameters on this, right? Daf'an, right? So in itself, when you appoint someone, the basis of the wakala is that it's general. But reducing it with urf has, the position of Sahibain here, this, the opinion of, that's mentioned from the Bazaziyya and elsewhere, has its weight. والوكيل بالشراء يجوز عقده بمثل القيمة وزيادة. Now the agent with buying is allowed to transact with the like of the qima, the price, or an increase. يتغابن الناس في مثلها. That is within the market, what's considered a small excess, right? Small reductions, right? For the reason that we mentioned. ولا يجوز بما لا يتغابن الناس في مثله, right? And they're not allowed to buy for an excess that is outside the what is the slight in the excess with shira. In buying, you can only buy for small excess, but not for an excessive price. What is الغبن الفاحش والذي لا يتغابن الناس فيه ما لا يدخل تحت تقويم المقومين, is that which does not enter into anyone's market valuation, right? So there's certain brand that this is, so this is the price, and there could be a slight variance on it, and there's a slight extra, right? This is considered a slight excess. Some people would accept, some people may sell it like that because some shops sell for cheap, they have lower overhead, etc. But some charge like a full price, they provide extra service, whatever. That's within the market price. That's slight excess. So when you are purchasing there, you have to keep it within that, right? And the ulama defined it, and you can find, for example, in the Majalla, the definition, what is ghabn yasir and ghabn fahish. They try to define it for different industries, and that's depending on urf, that what is considered to be a reasonable variance, just to give people a criteria. But that differs from industry to industry, right? Because some things are very competitive, so the fluctuation is small, and some things are less competitive, so there may be more fluctuations in it, right? So there's wakil bil bay' and wakil bil shira, right? Wakil bil bay', the Imam and the Sahibain differed. The basis, according to Abu Hanifa, is al-wakil bil bay', the one who's been made an agent to sell, could sell for little or a lot. Fil asl, right? The Sahibain said limited that as well with what? With the ghabn yasir, that you sell it, if you sell it for less than the market price, it only be for what is considered a slight reduction, right? And many of the later scholars did say that the fatwa is on their position. So in that case, but there are two opinions with respect to al-wakil bil bay'a, the one appointed as an agent to sell. That Abu Hanifa said, if you're appointed to sell, I said, let's say this book is worth $5. I told somebody, sell this for me. I didn't specify anything. Its market value, let's say in Canada, is $5. They sold it for $1. I can't, according to Abu Hanifa, I can't complain. If I wanted to set a minimum price, I should have, right? Because al-asl is, and that goes back to the definition of wakil. The wakil is, you have consigned the judgment to that person in this particular matter. But so in that sense, legally, Abu Hanifa's position is stronger. But in terms of fatwa, there's a strong case that this be limited within urf. Because al-ma'ruf kal-mashrut, the sahibain limited this by the market standard, which is al-ghabn al-yasir, that if I appoint someone as a wakil bil bay'a, an agent to sell this book on my behalf, market price is, let's choose a bigger book, right? $20 is the market price, let's say. So if I appoint someone as an agent to sell this book, market value is, let's say it's between $20 and $25. Al-ghabn al-yasir in a book, so let's say the market value is $20. A slight reduction would be what would be considered reasonable in the market. Because people do give discounts. So if there was, let's say if you looked at this sale, the book's market price is 20. Everybody's selling it for 20. Someone sold it for 18. Would you find that very strange? Someone sold it for 15. And so that would be a bit strange, right? So what is it? ما لا يتغابن بمثله. A rate like that is not given. Now, practically, if you appoint someone on an ongoing basis, you should define what are the discounts, right? In selling, that should be part of the agency, that they can give a discount of up to this much. Set the price and set a discount, because selling at discount is part of selling. But you set, because so that the taradi remains, you set the discount, and if you're going beyond the discount, you should seek permission. That is proper practice, right? So here, the fatwa of the Bazzaziyah certainly is the more precautious thing. That with agency, it should be limited to what is acceptable within the market, right? Okay. And now al-wakil bishira, right? The wakil to buy something, they agreed it needs to be at the qima or a slight excess, right? Or a slight excess, and that's agreed upon between, right? Which is that which is within what is accepted within the market. وإذا ضمن الوكيل بالبيع الثمن عن المبتاع فضمانه باطل. If the agent guarantees, the agent to بالبيع, the agent to sell guarantees the price right? On behalf of the agent to بالبيع, the agent to sell, right? So what's the scenario? I appointed Sidi Hamza to make bay'ah, to sell this book. So Sidi Hamza is going to sell this book. So he's acting as an agent on my behalf. So he guarantees the thaman. So he guarantees the price from al-mubta', the one he's selling it to. So he sells it to Zain, and he guarantees the price. This daman is batil. This guarantee is batil. Why? Because the wakil, the thaman is an amana in his hand, right? So he cannot be a guarantor for that price, right? وإذا وكله ببيع عبده فباع نصفه جاز عند أبي حنيفة, right? If a person was appointed as an agent to sell the slave and he sold half the slave, this is valid according to Abu Hanifa because he gave him unconditioned agency, right? Right? وإن وكله بشراء عبد فاشترى نصفه فالشراء موقوف. Now, if he was appointed as an agent to buy a slave and he purchased half the slave, how do you purchase half the slave? That there's a slave, so okay, I have 50% ownership and someone else has 50% ownership, then that purchase is mawquf, right? Is suspended pending the approval of the person who appointed the agent. فَنِشْتَرَى بَاقِيَهُ لَزِمَ الْمُوَكِّلِ. But if he purchased half and then the second half, then it becomes binding because he did exactly what was requested. وَإِنْ وَكَّلَهُ بِشِرَاءِ عَشَرَةِ أَرْطَالٍ لَحْمٍ بِدِرْهَمٍ واحد فاشترى 20 بدرهم من لحم وباع مثله يباع مثله 10 يعني يباع مثله. What do you have? عشرة بدرهم لزم الموكل منه 10 أرطال بنصف درهم عند أبي حنيفة وقال يلزمه 20. Okay, so this is, there's the basic issue and then there are derivative principles from this, right? And this is where the agent has been commanded to do something specific and they go against the command of the request of the one who specified them. 100 carpets for $100. Okay, 100 carpets for $10,000. The problem that happens is that is the request for 100 carpets or is the request to buy carpets worth $10,000? That's a problem, right? I said, here's $10,000, buy me 100 carpets. Am I asking you to buy 100 carpets or am I asking you to buy $10,000 worth of carpets? It could be understood both ways, right? Because let's say I did that, right? So let's say, I have a carpet shop. So I gave my agent who went to Tajikistan to get some Tajik carpets. I said, okay, we saw something online. I say, okay, go to Damad Effendi and get 100 of those carpets for $10,000. He went and he negotiated a better price. He got 200 carpets for $10,000. This will lead to dispute. Right? So that these eventualities, properly speaking, should be addressed in the contract. If not addressed in the contract, then as-sarih aqwa, it's best to confirm that, okay, I can get a better deal. Do you approve this? And one works that so that ad-dararu yuzal, harm is lifted. But if it's not, then let's see what Imam Abu Hanifa says. إذا وكله بشراء 10 أرطال لحم. If someone appointed another as an agent to buy 10 rittles of meat for a dirham, and the wakil purchased 20 rittles for a dirham of the meat, the like of which is normally purchased for 10 dirham. Right? So according to Imam Abu Hanifa, لزم الموكل منه 10 أرطال بنصف درهم. According to Abu Hanifa, what is due is the one who appointed the agent, he requested 10 rittles of meat, 10 kilos of meat. Right? So I asked for 10 kilos of meat for a dirham. Let's say $100. You managed a better deal. You got 20 kilos. I did not, because, and this goes back to the principle, al-maqsood min al-bay' huwa al-mabi'. What is the purpose of the transaction is the item of sale. So what did I request? I request وَالثَّمَنُ وَسِيلَةٌ. Right? The price is just the means. So according to Abu Hanifa, in this case, what is due is, as the one who appointed, I only have to accept 10 of those rittles of meat. I only have to pay half a dirham for it, according to Abu Hanifa, because the command was to buy 10. Right? Because the asl in the transaction, in موضوع عقد البيع هو المبيع, the subject of the sale, contract of sale, is the item of sale. وَالثَّمَنْ وَسِيلَةٌ, the price is the means. That's why if the price is not mentioned, the contract is valid but corrupt. If the item of sale is not specified, the transaction is invalid. Buy something for $10 is not valid. I sell you something for $10. وَقَالَا يَلْزَمُهُ الْعِشْرُونَ. And the Sahibain said 20, the 20 rittles are binding upon them. Right? And the asl here is the position of Abu Hanifa. Right? This also depends on the nature of the agency. Right? Because this is one of the things in agency that leads to a lot of disputes, right? That we say, okay, use your judgment. About what? Like, is the agency to buy, and this is to buy $100, $10,000 worth of goods, and I think we can get this. Right? What is the asl in the transaction? Right? Is the agency specific for get me 100 carpets? Right? And we say, on the assumption that we can get them for this much. So here's the money. And a good contract looks at likely eventualities. Because the other possibility of the contract is that, okay, here is $10,000, use them to buy carpets. On the understanding that you're going to get 100 carpets. But then the proper practice would be, in the event that the carpets are more, this is what you do. In the event that the carpets are less, this is what you do. That would be the safer thing, right? You have permission to buy to buy more if there's a better deal, etc. So those things are good to think through. Right? وإذا وكله بشراء شيء بعينه فليس له أي للوكيل أن يشتريه لنفسه. Right? If someone appoints another to buy something specific, and of course the wakil agreed because there's ijab and qabul, then the wakil, the agent, does not have the right to buy that specific things for themselves. It's an amana. So let's say there's one original edition of Mulla Ali al-Qari's Ayn al-Ilm wa Zayn al-Hilm, right? And it's available for sale at this unknown bookstore in Mississauga. So let's say there's some old Maulana who has a bookstore in his garage. But now he's got the coronavirus, so he's made a sale. And there's one copy. But I don't want to go buy it, so I appointed an agent. Can you go buy me that copy of Sharh Ayn al-Ilm wa Zayn al-Hilm for $150? It's an original copy, 2 volumes. So Zayn agreed, but he goes, he sees it. Oh my goodness, this is so awesome. So Zayn agreed to be the agent on my behalf. He really likes it. Is it halal for him to buy it for himself? No. Once he accepted, right, this is something specific, as opposed to there's something that yuba'u bil mithl. I got one, he got one, a published book. But even at the published book, if there's only one copy and you agreed to be to get it on behalf of somebody, then you can't get it yourself, right? What would the case there be? Practically, someone's shopping for books online, right? So if I'm placing an order online and I asked Sidi Yaqub, do you need a book? So he said, yeah, there's a book on the rulings of siwak by Allama Abdul Ghani al-Maydani called تحفة النساك في فضل السواك. Could you buy me a copy? I said, yes. Now by saying that, what is that? That's tawkil. I'm now an agent on his behalf. Like, request to buy, we accept it, right? Within the market price. So there I go and I see online, oh my god, this is actually quite useful. Really nice, mashallah. And there's a research paper at the end by Shaykh Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda. There's this issue at the end, oh my goodness, what about the issue of using the right hand, Allahu Akbar, and the left hand for siwak. Oh wow. So I decided to order it for myself. I said, sorry, I didn't find a copy. There's only one copy. I got it for myself. لا يطيب ديانة and possibly قضاء. I have to give this copy to him. Right? لا يجوز. Right? وإن وكله بشراء عبد بغير عينه فاشترى فهو للوكيل إلا أن يقول نويت الشراء للموكل أو يشتريه بمال الموكل. But if he was appointed as an agent to buy a non-specific slave, right? Then he purchased a slave without intending to buy it for the muwakkil, then, so he didn't intend to buy it for the agent, nor did he pay it with his money, nor ascribe it that I am buying this for so and so, then it is for the wakil, unless he either إلا أن يقول نويت الشراء للموكل, unless he says I had intended to buy it for my agent, or he used the money given by the muwakkil, or he ascribed it to the muwakkil. Right? Now, in those three cases, you can't go back on it. Right? So where does this apply? Let's say, I requested Sidi Yaqub's traveling to Turkey. So I asked him to buy me a red sibha, or a kook sibha. Now, he went and bought a kook sibha. Is that necessarily for me? No. Right? Because it was not for a specific sibha. Right? So there, how does it become buying on my behalf? Either by the intention. When buying it, okay, here I'm buying this for Sidi Faraz. So now if he bought it for me, then diyanatan, now this, the sibha he bought with the intention that he bought it for me, this is mine. And it's amana in his hands. And diyanatan, he is not allowed to change his mind later. Right? Without approval from me. Right? That's why it's an amana. Either by the intention, or he ascribed it to me. Right? So he purchased it from Sidi Anas Harun in Istanbul and says, I'm buying this for Sidi Faraz. Then khalas. Or if he used the money I gave him. Now the other thing, that the mal given by the wakil is a trust with the muwakkil is a trust with the wakil. So if I gave money, if I'm given money by Zain, right, to as an agent, that money I am not allowed to mix it with my money, because that money is amana, and ida'at al-amana is very serious, and there's all kinds of risks that can arise. Someone spends it on groceries, say, I'll replenish it, and then they don't, etc. Very, very dangerous. Okay. And there's some details related to this that one can find. والوكيل بالخصومة وكيل بالقبض عند الثلاثة. Right? So the one who is appointed as an agent for khusuma, to argue, to make a case on your behalf, right? Like to make a claim, for example, right? Is also wakil to then take possession of what you are claiming, according to our three imams, Abu Hanifa, Abu Yusuf, and Muhammad. And this is khilafan li Zufar, contrary to Imam Zufar, right? Why? Because you're trusting someone as a lawyer, or trusting someone to make your case, but that trust, ma qillat al-amana, you trust someone to make the case, but you don't necessarily trust them to take the money on your behalf. So the fatwa in our time is on the position of Zufar, that the one who is arguing your case on your behalf is not necessarily also does not necessarily have the right to then take possession of the. So you claim that someone owed you $100, $100,000, right? So they argued the case for you in court. They won this, or they were part of a tahkim, an adjudication process, whatever. So that there was either a legal judgment or a settlement made on your behalf. So they represented you in your claim. You appointed them for that. That does not automatically give them the right to take possession of it. So even if it's offered to them, say, I do not have permission to take this. Please contact so and so, or they would seek explicit permission first, right? And this is explained out, right? والوكيل بقبض الدين وكيل بالخصومة عند أبي حنيفة, right? The one who has been appointed to take possession of a debt has been appointed implicitly as a wakil, as an agent to make a claim. Because the one who's been appointed to collect a debt has also been implicitly appointed to make a claim for the debt, because very often the two are interrelated, right? Right? And the asl, this is the asl is that fatwa is on the position of Abu Hanifa here, but this may vary from land to land. And there's been ikhtilaf of tasheeh regarding this. There's been difference of opinion about this, but that's a matter that returns to urf, right? Because frequently, collecting a debt requires making a claim against somebody. So, and they say, إذا ثبت المتضمن ثبت المتضمن. If something that is entailed within something is affirmed, then what it is part of is also affirmed. وإذا قر الوكيل بالخصومة على موكله عند القاضي جاز إقراره ولا يجوز إقراره عليه عند غير القاضي عند أبي حنيفة ومحمد إلا أنه يخرج من الخصومة. وقال أبو يوسف يجوز إقراره عليه عند غير القاضي. Right? So here, if the agent who's been appointed to make a claim, right? Or makes an admission that counts against the one who appointed them, in the presence of the qadi, this admission is valid, right? Because the one making a claim has to respond to the details of the claim, right? So, for example, he claims that so-and-so owes him $100,000. So you appointed somebody, so that they're asked, but did you not waive, did your client, the one who appointed you not waive the debt? He said, yes, he did. That the admission there of the wakil bil khusuma, the agent who's making a case for you. This could be a claim, or whether they're the mudda'i, the claimant, or the defendant. So they're representing you. They're like your lawyer. They make an admission against you. It counts. You have to be careful who you appoint, right? Because they're representing you in the presence of the qadi. But their admission before other than the qadi is not binding according to Abu Hanifa and Abu Yusuf, because your lawyer is acting on your behalf in court. They're not your life representative, right? However, إلا أنه يخرج من الخصومة, right? Except that would take them out of their being your agent in this dispute, right? Why? Because you know, I appointed Omar to collect $1,000 debt owed to me by Zubair. Now in court, if Omar said, "Oh, he yeah," see, Faraz waived it. That's binding. But outside court, like you're supposed to make the case for me in court that Zubair has to pay me $1,000. Outside court, he said, but I have to make this claim, but he already waived it. Now you're no longer fit to represent me in court. Right? 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 Wakala Abu Yusuf said, the admission is binding even outside the context of the court, i.e. outside of being in front of the qadi. The fatwa is on the position of Abu Hanifa and Muhammad here. ومن ادعى أنه وكيل الغائب في قبض دينه فصدقه الغريم أمر بتسليم الدين إليه. Now, whoever claims that they're an agent on behalf of someone absent to collect their debt, then if the one who owes the money believes the claim, then they're commanded to pay the debt to him. But you have to be smart there. Like there's two things, right? There's an amana, right? There's an amana that you're the one who, فَتَبَيَّنُوا, right? The moral imperative there would be that you have to act upon reasonable judgment, right? Right? Because you morally, whom do you have to pay? You have to pay the one you owe the money to. Now, in the event of there not being, decisive proof that this person is acting on the behalf, when there's yaqeen, khalas, the issue is clear, right? If there's documentation, there's clear objective proof. But in the absence of that, you have a moral obligation to be reasonably sure that this person is in fact representing the person. A moral obligation to the one you owe the money to, but also a responsibility with respect to yourself, because we are prohibited from squandering our wealth, right? So allowing yourself to be scammed, cheated, etc., right, is makruh, and if it leads to the non-fulfillment of other rights, it could be sinful. So our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam forbade that, right? Forbade allowing oneself to be wronged. But then let's say the one who owes the money believed that this person who came and said that this money is, I am collecting this money on behalf of Sidi Yaqub. فَإِنْ حَضَرَ الْغَائِبِ. But then the absent person on whose behalf the money was claimed to be collected, فَصَدَّقَهُ, and the person said, yes, the money was in fact owed to me, then khalas, it is straightforward. وَإِلَّا, but if they don't confirm them that no, he didn't have permission to collect on my behalf, دفع إليه الغريم الدين ثانيا, then the one who owed the money has to give it a second time, right? So Zubair owes me $1,000. I'm traveling to Turkey. Some random guy called Bilal comes and tells Zubair that I'm collecting this money on behalf of Sidi Faraz. So Zubair pays him. And I come back and said, where's my money? He said, I gave it to Bilal. I don't have anything to do with Bilal. Then I have to be paid another time. Okay? That's where خُذُوا حِذْرَكُمْ, take your precautions. Applies not only in jihad, it applies in life as well. Like, do not be prepared for what is coming and shield yourself from harm. Right? And they say, Al-mu'minu kayyisun fatin. Right? Right? Kayyis, the believer is, and Shaykh Abdul Rahman once quoted that and he covered his mouth and started laughing. Right? Al-mu'min kayyisun fatin. The believer is smart and fatin and wary. It says walaysa, and of course that's the hadith. And he said walaysa kisa qutnin, and they're not a bag. Kis is a bag, qutn of cotton. Right? They're just fluff. They just scatter, right? Then Shaykh Al-Arad covered his mouth and there's no sound coming, but he thought it was really funny. Rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. But in this case, وَيَرْجِعُ بِهِ عَلَى الْوَكِيلِ أي الذي ادعى الوكالة, the one who, but in this case, the one who paid this person who claimed to be an agent, right? So Zubair owes me $1,000. Bilal showed up. I'm away. Bilal showed up and said, "You owe Sheikh Faraz $1,000. I'm an agent to collect on his behalf." But he wasn't. I said no. And I proved that. No, I don't have to prove. I said no, he wasn't my agent, and he doesn't have proof that he was. He said he didn't give me the money. So there, Zubair would have to pay me, and then he has a right to then demand the money from this false claimant of agency who took the money from him. And if he doesn't, then he can take him to court. But this is where, if you repay a debt, etc., document it. Document it. إن كان المال باقيا في يده, the money remains in his hand, right? وإن قال إني وكيل بقبض الوديعة فصدقه المودع لم يؤمر بالتسليم إليه. Right? If someone claims that I'm an agent to collect an item that was in safekeeping with you, right? How? He doesn't have to believe it. The one who had it in safekeeping does not need to believe it. Does not have to give it. And does not have to give it to them. Right? Unless there's proof, right? Unless there is clear proof. Unless they can provide clear proof. And then, so that's what we wanted to look at today with agency. And we see the importance of tathabbut, of being very careful to confirm the particulars of such transactions. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Any questions before we close?
To Wakala, or would any use of the possession in the wakil's hand?
What?
Apply to Wakala?
No, tasarruf al-fuduli can apply, but it so acting without permission, the basis that you don't, but But for example, let's say I went to the book fair in Egypt, and Sidi Zain gave me $5,000 to buy books on his behalf. Sidi Hamza gave me $200 to buy a couple of books on his behalf, because let's say he's getting married, so he's saving for his mahar. Sidi Yaqub gave me $1,000 to buy books on his behalf. But then I found a couple of books, and they each gave me a book list. But I found a few books that I bought some extra books for each of them. That's fuduli. That's outside the list of books. That's mawquf on their approval. Now, especially in our times, given the facilitation of means of communication, etc., where possible, it's best to confirm. I found this. Would you like it? Yes. And to do that, to be just very clear. But if not, then the implications of the bay' al-fuduli would apply. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for facilitation.
What is the difference of the wakil of bay' and the wakil of shira, such that according to the Imam, the latter must transact when the market price and sale of a slave is suspended, whereas for the former, the sale occurs in both cases?
With respect to the slave? No. The difference between the wakil bil bay' and the wakil bil shira in general is very straightforward, right? Because if I appointed you to sell something, then I'm trusting your judgment. I didn't put a limit. So according to Imam Abu Hanifa, if I wanted to set a minimum price, I would have. If I wanted the market price, I would have. Also because selling things, based on negotiation, so I might not be able to get the market price, right? But we said, a lot of the mutaakhirin gave fatwa on the position of the Bazzaziyya, who said, alayhi al-fatwa, right? On the other hand, in buying, where do you buy from? You buy from the market. And the qima is there in the market, right? So that's why Imam Abu Hanifa distinguished between the two. But we mentioned that, Allahu Alam, there's tafsil in this, but the best practice, the sound practice, is to define the parameters of agency. Happens in all kinds of things, right? Even in simple things, right? Agency creeps into day-to-day things. Let's say there are 3 siblings. They say, let's hold a dinner, an anniversary dinner for the parents. I said, okay. And we'll split the cost, right? And they say, okay, Omar, you order the food. So now you are asil, right? So we split it. There's 3 people. The assumption is split in thirds, right? But now, if they appointed you as an agent on this on this, and they didn't specify, what if you could go and cheap out and get some just franchise, some like cheapo pizza. What if you go gourmet, this, that, you spend $450 on some super exclusive handcrafted meal? Right? Now that's exaggerated, but you spent a lot more than they wanted. So they feel bad. Let's buy a gift together for our parents, for so and so. So it's best to put a threshold on these things. Let's get this, but and then it leads to drama. Say, well, you're the oldest, so you need to pay more. That's not a reasonable claim, right? Because If something's split, the assumption is it's split equally, unless otherwise specified. But just good there, it doesn't take a lot to say, okay, let's just agree. We're going to split this in thirds. Agreed. Let's set a price. Like set a price. When buying, set a price ceiling. When selling, set a price floor. That avoids a lot of differences. Right? If you got less for that, great. If it's going to cost more, seek permission. Now, in any situation where there could be difference on what to get, then at the very least, you set some boundaries. It's good. Just okay, no fast food. Because let's say one sibling is anti-fast food. So exclude that. One said, I don't want vegetables. So exclude it. Right? So that's how we apply this knowledge practically, right? إلا أن تكون تجارة عن تراض منكم, except that it be through trade on the basis of established mutual agreement between you. Okay? فكل ما حقق وصف التراضي فهو محمود شرعا. Everything that realizes the quality of تراضي is praiseworthy in the shara. وكل ما يزيل وصف التراضي فهو مذموم. And everything that would remove this تراضي is blameworthy. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.